The legs of my chair screamed against the marble a half-second before my spine hit empty air. 200 wedding guests went silent as I hit the floor. A water goblet shattered against the tile and sprayed glass across my palm. My sister Delphine Calloway stood over me in her ivory gown, still holding the chair she'd just pulled out from under me. "You don't belong at the family table," she said. Not shouted. Said. Like she was reading it off a card she'd been carrying for years. Across the room, her husband Julian Marsh stood up so fast his own chair tipped backward. "That's enough," he said. "Do you want me to tell everyone the truth?" Delphine went still. The truth had been 6 weeks in the making. And it started in a speech therapy waiting room that smelled like burnt coffee. Now, let me back up. I'm 39. I run operations at a rehabilitation hospital in Ohio, which mostly means I spend my days making sure paperwork tells the truth about what happened to a patient. Every Tuesday I wheeled my father, Walter Calloway, into that same waiting room for his appointment, while my mother, Helene, explained to anyone who'd listen why Delphine, 20 minutes late, same as always, deserved the good doctors, and I deserved the folding chair by the door. I didn't fight her on it. I never had. That habit of mine, the one where I keep records instead of raising my voice, comes from the job. Insurance doesn't care how you feel. It cares what you can prove. So the evening this started, I was at my kitchen table going through Dad's care log, the blue binder I'd kept since his stroke 3 years back. I found a reimbursement check made out to Delphine. For bathroom accessibility equipment I had already paid for myself. Invoice in hand. Below it, a $4,000 charge under a merchant code that didn't match anything medical. I photographed the statement. I slid it into the binder next to the others. Then I drove to my parents' house to ask my sister directly. Delphine folded her arms in my parents' kitchen and told me Dad knew she was just organizing things. My mother accused me of trying to control the family. Same as always. But my father, watching from his wheelchair, raised his good hand and knocked 3 times against the side table. In his therapy shorthand, the tapping code his speech therapist, Renata Vasquez, had built with him after the stroke stole his full sentences, but not his mind. 3 knocks meant no. I didn't argue with Delphine. I just nodded, kissed my father's forehead, and went home to the apartment I'd quietly rented 3 months earlier, on my own salary, that no one in my family knew existed. That night I looked up the merchant code. It wasn't a pharmacy. It wasn't a contractor. It was the Windermere Grand Hotel. My father hadn't paid for a ramp. He'd been billed for his daughter's wedding venue. I emailed Delphine, asking for invoices tied to 3 specific withdrawals. She called within minutes, furious, demanding to know why I was auditing her. You know that feeling when you've been the patient one for so long that patience itself starts to feel like a mistake. Then for 2 weeks something strange happened. Delphine started calling just to talk. She asked about my job. She sent a photo of Dad laughing at something on his tablet, captioned, "He misses you at Sunday dinner." She invited me to help pick centerpieces. I let my guard down. I told myself maybe I'd read the charge wrong. Maybe this was her way of making it right without admitting it out loud. I should have known better. Because the morning I finally sat down to ask her, gently, about the hotel charge again, she beat me to it. She posted a cropped screenshot in the family group chat, the exact amount I'd personally advanced for Dad's wheelchair ramp, and called it proof that I was the real thief. My mother demanded an apology. I didn't say a word. I just attached the itemized receipt. And my father's signed authorization for my reimbursement. The chat went quiet. But the war had only started. Days later I drove to my parents' house to drop off a prescription. My access code didn't work. A text from Delphine popped up seconds later. She'd stripped my caregiver app permissions to protect Dad from financial pressure. The family, she said, had decided I shouldn't come by anymore. I didn't pound on the door. I screenshotted the lockout. I called my father's room phone and told him, lightly, I'd see him at therapy later that week. He tapped the receiver twice. Acknowledged. That night I signed the acceptance letter for a promotion I'd delayed for years to take care of him. I moved my emergency fund to a new bank. I started sketching a business plan for a consulting service to help families navigate stroke recovery. The kind of logistics nobody warns you about. I was quietly building a life that didn't depend on any of them. Nobody in my family knew it existed. The following week I brought my binder to Bianca Fontaine, an elder law attorney with a calm, unhurried office downtown. She asked if my goal was control of my father's accounts, or protection of my father, period. I told her the truth. I didn't want a cent of his money. Taking control would only prove Delphine's story right. That I was the greedy one. Bianca pulled his actual power of attorney from the county database. Strictly limited to medical and living expenses. No gifting authority. Mandatory record keeping. Delphine had already violated it by refusing an accounting. Bianca laid the bathroom invoice next to the hotel charge and circled both figures in red. They matched exactly. We spread 18 months of statements across her desk. Small test withdrawals a year back. Then a sudden spike 8 months ago, right when Delphine posted her engagement ring online. Bianca sent preservation notices to the bank, the hotel, every vendor. Within days, a wedding planner's forwarded email showed Delphine had personally instructed vendors to use vague billing descriptions. She wasn't confused about boundaries. She was building a disguise. My father's speech therapist, Renata Vasquez, asked me to sit in on his session that Thursday. He was sharp. He verified dates, addresses, his own birthday. Trapped only by a stroke that had stolen his sentences, not his mind. When Renata mentioned Delphine's wedding, he slammed his fist down 3 times. Then he used his communication tablet to select 2 words. Private meeting. Renata told me quietly he'd been trying to say that for 3 weeks. 2 weeks before the ceremony. While Delphine was at her final dress fitting, I arranged a private evaluation. Bianca, an independent psychiatrist, and a notary met my father in a conference room. Through his tablet, he confirmed he'd never agreed to a venue, address, or credit card payoffs. Only nursing invoices. He remembered giving Delphine a text authorization code, believing it was for his wheelchair ramp. In reality, it had made her an approved payee on his checking account. He signed a full revocation of her power of attorney. His hand shook. The signature was deliberate. That evening my mother left a furious voicemail. On it, she admitted she'd known about the missing funds, and that Delphine planned to pay it back with her inheritance. An admission that they'd been dividing a living man's estate while he was still sitting across the table from them. 4 days before the wedding, a bank fraud investigator called. Delphine had scheduled a $28,000 transfer to the Windermere Grand, timed to the venue deadline. Our legal freeze had caught it before it cleared. Delphine called minutes later. Sweet at first. Then panicked. She wanted me to recant to the investigators, to call it an early inheritance. I told her she had no legal authority left, and I hung up. Bianca sent a formal settlement demand. Full accounting. Return funds. Restored access to our father. Deadline, Friday before the rehearsal dinner. Delphine texted that I was a bitter, jealous woman trying to ruin her happiness. My mother offered a conditional truce. I could come to the wedding. The photographer needed a full family portrait, and Dad refused to wear his tuxedo unless I was there, but I was to keep my mouth shut, seated near the kitchen doors. I nearly said no. Then my aunt, Josephine Calloway, sent me a photo of my father's tablet. It read, "Please come sit with me." That settled it. I locked my binder in Bianca's filing cabinet. I arranged my own transportation. I brought no gift. And I dropped my apartment key into my clutch. A reminder that I had somewhere safe to go home to. The morning of the wedding, Julian called, tense, asking why our father's name was tangled in a billing dispute. I told him to ask his bride. He texted me a screenshot from the hotel's vendor portal. A balance due. A declined transaction. Walter Calloway listed as account holder. Delphine says your father gave us the money, he wrote. The hotel says the payment was returned. Inside the Windermere Grand, chandeliers glittered over roses that represented physical therapy sessions my father would never get. My mother grabbed my wrist mid-reception, hissing at me to stay silent. At the seating chart, I found my name banished to the overflow table by the kitchen doors. But across the room, my father slammed his armrest 3 times, and Josephine flagged down a staff member to bring a chair to the head table instead. Delphine intercepted me before I could sit. She ordered me back to the corner. accused me of trying to steal her spotlight. I told her calmly that Dad could answer for himself, and reached for the chair. That was when she yanked it away. The crack of wood against marble. The goblet shattering. 200 guests going silent. Dozens of phones already raised for the toasts, now catching something else entirely. My father hammered his fist in that same rhythm. No, no, no. Julian stood, his own chair tipping over behind him. That's enough. Do you want me to tell everyone the truth? Security stepped in when Delphine lunged for our father's tablet. Josephine caught it first, and set it back in his lap. Julian asked him directly. Had he agreed to pay for the wedding? 3 knocks. Then threw the tablet. No. Delphine spun on me, screaming that I'd trained a brain-damaged man like a circus animal. I never touched the tablet. My father kept typing. I understand. Delphine used my money. Josephine told the stunned room he understood every word. Cornered, Delphine cracked. She shrieked that the estate money would have been hers eventually anyway. Julian looked at his bride with open disgust, told the room the reception was over, and walked out without looking back. At urgent care, getting glass picked out of my palm, I got a text from Bianca. The bank had found an external account under Delphine's name. The wedding was only part of it. The forensic accounting, finished weeks later, put the number at $120,000. Stolen over 18 months. Funneled into credit cards, vacations, clothes. Every transfer mislabeled as a caregiver reimbursement to me. A frame job, the login records and my own hospital time cards demolished instantly, since the transfers came from her IP address during hours I was clocked in at work. The district attorney charged her with felony embezzlement, financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, and battery. She swore she'd fight it, until the case in front of her made that impossible. She took a plea. Restitution that forced her to sell her car and drain her savings. A permanent forfeiture of any right to manage another person's finances. At sentencing, she cornered me in the hallway, begging me to tell the judge Dad had always meant to give her the money. I reminded her she'd had 6 weeks to come clean before she chose to pull a chair out from under me in front of 200 people. In court, I read a statement built from words my father had chosen himself, about the indignity of being silenced. When I finished, his tablet spoke one line into the room. Simone told the truth. Delphine got 3 years. 18 months active, the rest suspended, with mandatory restitution. My mother tried one more time on the courthouse steps, demanding I pay her legal fees and write a forgiveness letter to the parole board. I told her forgiveness doesn't require erasing consequences, or funding a disaster I didn't cause. And I walked away. Months later, I accepted my promotion. My side business, Anchor Point Consulting, took its first real client. A family untangling a medical trust for a relative who'd lost her ability to speak. My father lives now in an assisted living apartment with wide windows and ferns we picked out together. Small, ordinary choices that once felt impossible for him. My mother visits on Tuesdays. No legal power left to hold over anyone. One quiet evening, sharing a meal at the second-hand table I'd built myself, with Josephine pouring water, my father spelled out 3 words on his screen. This is family. My business phone rang that same night. A stranger, crying, said her brother had just accused her of stealing from their father's care fund. I didn't offer empty comfort. I pulled out a blank folder and told her to take a breath and tell me what records she already had. Because sometimes the hardest lesson isn't that you have to be the strong one. It's that being strong doesn't mean disappearing into everyone else's lies. It means documenting the truth until it can't be denied. Take a moment and comment your city or country. I love connecting with you. Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe for more stories. More are coming your way soon. Until next time, stay kind to yourself. And stay strong.